All right, David. So, welcome to the show. Kind of the first question I want to ask you: recent news about Breeze taking a few more A220 options, and of course, going to an all A220, non-charter fleet. Tell me a little bit about the decision-making process there, and how you all came to kind of marry up to the A220.
Well, we picked the A220 because it's an amazing aircraft. It has the newest technology. Commercial airplane that there exists. It's probably 20 years newer technology than even the A320, and even more than the 737, maybe 40 years newer technology in the base, as far as the circumference size, the window sizes, the avionics, all that kind of stuff. And what we noticed is we were flying, the Embraers work great for charter, and they lower utilization. But what we noticed is that about 25% of the customers today, at least 25% want an upgraded experience, and they'll pay for it. So what we find is when someone flies us the first time or the second time or the third time, they usually upgrade their extra legroom seat or to what we call a sand, but it's really a first-class seat. And so the revenue we were getting per flight was so much more than with the 220. Even though it cost more because it's a newer airplane, it was burning less fuel, less maintenance, and had more revenue. It was just really a no-brainer to go, not only to put them all in scheduled service, but to also exercise some options. We have 100 to 120 total firms and options, and so we went from 80 to 90. So we've got another 30 we can exercise, but now we're up to 90 airplanes.
Gotcha. I know you talked a little bit about this during your press conference a couple of weeks ago, but I want to ask you about it again, just to hear it on here. But a lot of murmurings around the aviation blogger community about Breeze's profitability and kind of where that's going to be this year. What do you have to kind of say to that, assuming you've read some of it?
Yeah, I mean, we had a tough go. There was no doubt about it. There was a time in our history where we had 137 captains all hired because we were just hiring captains. We had 7 airplanes that we were paying for, and we were flying 1 airplane and 10 pilots. So obviously that makes for miserable numbers. But what you've seen is the progression of the last 2.5 years. Operating margins have been coming down, to the point where, we can, obviously it's enormously better. But we're actually counting on making a profit this year. So that's a long ways from where we've come even last year. And last year was, the third quarter and the fourth quarter, particularly the third quarter, were really bad for the industry. There was a lot of capacity growth. The fuel went from $2.30 a gallon up to $3.30 a gallon. So we had the spike in fuel. We had the craziness that was going on with the other airlines. And so that was a kind of a scissor move that kind of doomed the whole industry, really, pretty much. And Spirit, you can see it in their numbers and even in the fourth quarter numbers. But, we've got that behind us. And the other thing we had is because we didn't get the pilots qualified kind of in 22 and 23, we had enormous growth. And so there was a lot of markets that were maturing. And now we've got a smaller percent that are new. And so, the revenue is really coming in and the costs are getting really a lot better. When you start a business, your costs are at all-time high and your revenues are all-time low. And then, those two things converge, and that's where you make a profit. And then after that, it's just kind of off to the races. So we feel really good about our positioning.
Got you. You kind of prompted another question here about, the whole theory in the low-cost market of cost convergence and kind of the changes these days. You hear a lot about it on different airlines earnings calls, the low-cost model. Especially the ultra low cost model isn't doing super great. What do you kind of say to that? Do you think that's valid concern, or do you think maybe some of these mentioned companies aren't quite set up to weather these waves?
I think it's a valid criticism in certain aspects. That I'll just give you two numbers. We've got about 90% of our routes where we have no nonstop competition. And, Spirit, for example, last number I saw were 80% where they had overlap. So, if times get tough or fuel goes up or fares come down or whatever, it's a much better position to be in where you have no competitive markets or very few competitive markets. Azul, I learned that lesson at Azul. Azul's got 80% of its markets where we're all by ourselves in Brazil. And we outperform, every other airline, and have in 14 years have become the largest airline in Brazil just because we, did a different strategy.
So speaking of routes, onlookers, what should we expect to see in terms of Breeze's route strategy here in 2024? Is there anything sort of on the horizon that you might be able to talk about?
Well, we're announcing them just about every day, it seems like.
Yes, it does.
We announced Manchester this week as our 51st city. And, we're just being opportunistic. One of the things that I didn't mention about, a comparison maybe with us and the ULCCs, there's a few things that are different. Number one, we're usually alone in our markets. Number two, we have a premium section of the airplane that makes sense, and it costs us less because of the 2 and 3 seating. When we go first class, we only lose 1 seat per row as opposed to double that amount if you're on a 737 or an A320. Those two things. But then it's the airplane size. I think these guys all thought, if we can just get lower and lower and lower CASMs, cost per available seat mile, and we can do that by just putting more and more seats in the airplane or going to a bigger and bigger airplane, then, we can always win. The challenge is that when the big guys, the majors, they started going with bigger and bigger airplanes, and they looked at their incremental size of an airplane between a 320 and a 321 or a max 8 or a max 7 in X7, but the 737 700 or 800 up to a max 9, they took those incremental seats and say, I get these seats cheaper than a ULCC does, so I'm just going to match them on those, and they created a special class of service for that. So, I love our trip cost advantage. Right? I would guess we're probably somewhere between 15 and 20% lower trip costs with a premium seating section being all alone in the market. And that really is, our advantage. And if you have a 20% lower trip cost, that means that if, I need 110 seats on an airplane and they need 110 seats on an airplane, we're both flying 110. That means I can be making a 20% margin. They can be breaking even. I can be making 10%. They're losing 10%. So that trip cost advantage is really big. And I that was a big lesson I also learned.
So you talk about sort of trip cost advantage and all that, and kind of always brings up the point nowadays of pilots and, new contracts that have come up that are, pretty lucrative for certainly the pilots. Do you kind of see this pilot shortage getting better, improving right now that everybody talks about?
Oh, much better. It's night and day. The difference of a year makes. Southwest just announced they've already hired pilots for their April class, but they said from April on, they're not hiring a single pilot the rest of the year. Spirit's got about 700 pilots, too many. You've got FedEx that has too many pilots. The hiring's slowing down. Delta said they're going to hire half as many pilots this year as they were last year. So it's really night and day difference. And I knew it would be because, numbers are numbers. And, there were about 7,000 pilots that were early retired during COVID. They kind of took some of that money that they got from the government and said, hey, how about if you guys retire early? So you had to backfill for those 7,000 plus all the people that were going to get to be 65, in the last 3 years. So probably 12,000 pilots that it had to be filled. But I think everybody's getting caught up now. And so we literally have hundreds and hundreds of pilot applications now. So we're in good shape.
So David, real quick, I wanted to ask about your guys' Embark pilot program. Can you talk a little bit about that and the schools you're partnering with for that? And is this kind of just to, maintain a pipeline of pilots going into Breeze?
Yeah, I mean, I can't give you specific examples of the schools, and we have a lot of them that we have relationships with. We've been focusing a little bit more honestly on more experienced first officers, because we want you to upgrade to be captain, and everybody wants to do that because you make twice as much money, just about. And so, we've been focusing, because we have so many pilot applications. We can really focus on the first officers that have more hours, so they can upgrade quicker for us. But it's something that will come in waves. Today we're not really focused on getting pilots out of training because we have so many applications, but that time will come again for sure.
That makes sense. Yeah. So you guys are basically hiring first officers with 121 experience already in their books.
Yeah. If we can, as much as we can. Yeah. Not someone who's just got their 1,500 hours. The regionals are doing mostly that, but we do hire some of those, and we like them, and they are well qualified. I can think of a few that are doing great for us. But when they come on, they have to fly another 1,000 hours before they can even qualify to become a captain, and probably 1,500 hours because they need like 3,000 hours in a larger transport airplane to be a captain.
So, we talk about pilots. It's always the flavor of the month. You got an earnings call, it's all about the pilots. But the thing that always strikes me is airline executive, do you find struggles in other work groups with retention and attrition and that sort of thing right now that may be overshadowed by all the pilot stuff?
Not really. I think the airports were challenged for a while. And getting people hired right after COVID, we haven't had too many problems with that. We are making a concerted effort this year to insource, at least above the wing, we call it. So our customer service contact positions to be in. So we've targeted 3 or 4 of our bigger cities to do that. I'd like to do more of that. Flight attendant attrition is. It varies based on bases, but we're doing some things there I think are pretty cool. We're gonna be offering more part-time, so people can do it as a part-time job where 2 people can share a line and fly together, and you divide it up, and then you can, if you're a mother or if you have other responsibilities in life, you can still have the thrill of being a flight attendant, but also not have it completely consume your whole life.
It's pretty cool. So I did want to also touch base too. We were talking a little bit about route structure a little earlier. Do you see kind of an international presence for Breeze here coming soon, perhaps?
I sure hope so. We have to go through the same process that we did when we certified. So we're doing to get what's called flag status. So we hope to be able to do international charters here pretty soon. And then the next step is over the next 4 to 6 months will be flag status. And there's a lot of international destinations we'd love to fly to.
Gotcha. So I also kind of wanted to touch to kind of on my final question here is, you've founded several different airlines. You've been on the ground floor of several. What do you say to somebody that might be interested in looking at starting an airline?
We'll get a lot of money.
Yeah.
Some serious money together. And unless it's a small operation that you find a little niche that you can do. And if you've got to pretty well be under, because of the pilot costs where they are today, you've got to be under 30 seats or even 9 seats, depending on how you interpret the law. That there's a lot of that area today. But just find a niche and exploit it, and our people are really good at doing that. I'm really pleased with how things are going.
Yeah, well, there's certainly maybe a niche during COVID that Breeze and some others found, but do you see a niche now that still exists here in the U.S.? Do you think the market's too saturated?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've got at least another 1,000 routes that we've identified that we can fly in. So we're only up to 170, and then by the time we get to 1,000, we'll find another 1,000.
Yeah, you guys need more Denver routes, just selfishly. I know you have that new Rhode Island one, but yeah.
Are you in Denver? Yeah, we're starting in Providence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a good route for us this summer. We'll see how it does, but it's more of a seasonal route. But, it's Rhode Island's amazing. It's in the summertime with Newport, lobsters and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Get those inland to the coast.
Yeah, well, I'll try it out.